From meeting room wisdom to bestseller lists, changemakers to chapter ones, this is where expertise meets legacy. You're tuning into the Authors on Mission podcast, where industry giants become literacy legends. In every episode, we talk with authors who turn their brilliance into books that transform lives. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission. Welcome to your authorship experience. All right, welcome everybody. Today we're diving deep into the world of radical transformation with a guest who embodies the phrase, go big or go broke. Frank McKinney started with 7 stints in juvenile detention and a 1.8 GPA, but he transformed himself into what the Wall Street Journal calls the real estate rock czar. From selling $14 million of oceanfront mansions to building self-sustaining villages in Haiti, from completing the world's toughest foot race 12 times to so many different things, Frank's story is anything but ordinary, and his new book, Aspire, really talks all about his experiences and helping readers push beyond their comfort zones and create lasting impact. So in today's episode, we're going to talk all about his journey, the writing process, what his book's done for him. And before we do though, I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission. And today we're going to explore how somebody with $50 in his pocket became one of the most successful real estate artists in the world. And without further ado, welcome Frank. Welcome to our show.
Danielle, I do a ton of podcasts, but anytime I can do one that helps other authors on mission, and they're not very many, I will tell you. Most of them are business related or, what we're doing in Haiti or with the running and all that kind of stuff. But this is something I've been looking forward to because I know what it was like before I was a published author. I know how long it took to become a published author. And now I just released my 9th book in 8 genres. The one we're going to talk about today is 3 books ago. It came out in 20...
Really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, but this is the only mindset book I wrote. And if you can delve in a little bit of the past, I figured it was about time that I shared some of the mindset applications that I have used to, be able to write 8 genres in 9 books and build some of the houses we built on the ocean and just kind of live that, if I were to go back 400 years, I would have loved to have been in the Renaissance era. But since I wasn't, I decided to try to be one today.
Yeah, just looking at your profile and everything I was able to find on you, you kind of just have your fingers in every pie, kind of like metaphorically speaking, just like all over the place. And, you just type your name and your face pops right up on any search engine. So that's just like going to show how your whole journey, everything. Would you say that it was impacted very much so by the time you were publishing your book as opposed to before you had your book?
Listen, I'm a lot less exciting and a lot more simple than I look. I will tell you that. My wife of 34 years calls me a nerd in cheap clothing. Like, he looks all exciting and Mr. Rock and roll. He goes to bed at 8. He gets up at 4. He doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, doesn't do drugs, gamble, doesn't womanize, doesn't overeat, doesn't oversleep. So my very first book came out in 2002, so 22 years ago. Depending on when this thing airs, maybe it's going to be 23 years. And the first book was Make It Big, 49 Secrets for Building a Life of Extreme Success. So you can turn the clock back. I was in my 30s, and I felt like I wanted to capture a mindset while it was in my 30s, the build up to that stage, because the most explosive growth. I came out of my 20s having just walked out of juvenile detention for the 7th time as an 18-year-old, almost 18-year-old. Having no money. And I ended my 20s going into my 30s where I amassed a lot of the information I put in to Make It Big, having done very well in real estate, having just gotten married a couple of years before I turned 30. If you look at your decades of your life, and you're very young, so you go from 0 to 10, and those kind of don't count because you're just really young. And then you look at 10 to 20, big changes, 20 to 30, which my daughter is in that demographic right now. Wow. And each decade represents a kind of like if you were an artist or like a performing artist, a catalog. You put together a catalog of your life during, when you're younger, it might be every 5 years. As you get a little older, I look at it in 10 years increments. And that's one of the reasons why I've chosen to try writing in 8 genres. The first book, Make It Big, was more of you would find it under almost philosophy, 49 Secrets for Building a Life of Extreme Success. More philosophical. My publisher at the time was Wiley & Sons out of New York, and they said, it's great you fancy yourself a philosopher, but you're a real estate guy. That's where you've made your name and made your mark. You've sold these multi-million-dollar houses. As you mentioned, we've sold 44 spec houses with an average selling price of $14 million over 30 years. Then they asked for a real estate book. But I reread my own Make It Big book every 2 years because I don't want to lose touch with how I was thinking back in my 20s and 30s.
Yeah, it's so funny. I was literally about to type up that same thing so I can come back to it, but I'm glad you allowed me a spot to jump in right there. The fact that you reread your own books is actually something that I haven't heard as a tip from other authors yet. So I'm really happy you shared that. I was like, that's something new that I haven't heard. Just going back to your own book and rereading it. You mentioned so that you can remember, where your mindset was back then and, how you were thinking. But I feel like in a way it also helps you to keep your content fresh and also just like building upon your own ideas too as you move forward into new ventures in your life as well. So, I mean, it's funny that no other author has mentioned that before. I didn't even think about it myself.
I look back at that book, I look back and I think, wow, because it took a while to catch on. Because I was proven in the real estate world, but I certainly wasn't proven as an author. It took me 4 years to get that book out. It took me, I remember I still have a file somewhere of the 25 rejection letters I got from publishers, and I got 20 rejection letters from agents. I mean, nobody wanted to represent that book. And I was on the cover of USA Today unveiling like a $25 million mansion. I was wearing a loincloth with a king's cloak sitting like a throne. And I always mentioned when I was ever in the media that I had an unpublished, unpurchased manuscript. And somebody read that at Wiley and said, that guy looks pretty interesting. I think I want to sign him. And so when Make It Big came out, I know we're going off on a little tangent here, but the reason I reread it is because it had 49 chapters that were all about 7 to 8 pages long. That's kind of how people think now, because we don't all have attention deficit disorder, but we all have attention deficit. Our attention spans are really, really short. So I thought, wow, 22 years ago, I was writing and getting to the point, no superfluous buildup. And people thought, my God, I mean, these chapters are so thin. There's only 7 or 8 pages. Nowadays, that book was about 300 pages long. The perfect size book now, so they say, I don't really like to follow it, is about 180 pages. Because, the attention spans are shorter and people don't have the time. And of course, the cool thing too is watching the evolution of, if I'm selling 10 copies of Aspire, which we'll talk about today, back in the early days, well, there was no Audible, but now I would say 4 out of my 10 books that I sell are Audible or not in print versions. So I've recorded all my books, well, not all of them, but the last 4 books. I'm a narrator. I really advise you, if you're writing a book and you can speak well, you can even hire a coach to help you speak well. The readers love to hear your content with your voice.
Yeah, I mean, there's something different about being able to hear it from the person who is actually thinking of the idea and putting it onto the paper, just the different intuitions that your voice might make as you're saying it, the passion behind your words also, like, rather than just reading it in whatever natural state your own mind would perceive it as. It definitely makes a big difference. I mean, not to mention the practical aspect of course, like you can listen to it while you're in the car or you're anywhere else. So I see why that's such a popular option, but just, any way to extend the reach of your book to after publication, like that's just
a tip on Audible. I listen to books on tape. Mm-hmm. I don't want to hear a bedtime story that puts me to sleep. So in other words, don't read your book word by word. I riff, I free associate. If there's a point I want to make and really drive home, I'll just go off script and drive that point home. So really, and oftentimes when I record it in a studio, I will put up, like a little doll or something as if I'm talking to you right across the microphone from me. Something I imagine I'm having a conversation versus just taking this book and reading, Mary Had a Little Lamb and putting my little daughter to sleep. I want to make it more real, more conversational, and that has resonated. So try that if you're recording your book on Audible.
So Frank, are you telling us that if our listeners were to listen to your Audible books, they have some kind of bonus content that's not found in your book, that, just some stories that they wouldn't be able to find anywhere else because you kind of riffed then?
You could say that, but I don't record it thinking, oh, this is a bonus for you.
Well, right. But
my most recent book is called Aspirational Thoughts, Inspirational Images, an art gallery and teacher, a photography exhibit and mentor. So on one side of the page is a photograph. I'm a photographer, a photograph mostly of nature. On the other side of the page, there's 10 chapters: action, love, risk, joy. I can't remember all of it off the top of my head, but let's say you're in the action chapter. You want to take action in your life. You read, these are quotes. These are not chapters. These are just thoughts, quotes, and ideas. There's 135 images, 261 thoughts, quotes, and ideas. If you're reading something on action, sacrifice today for a better tomorrow, or don't put off living now because you perceive that living then will be better. Little snippets. Then you tie that to the image on the other side. That image will help you remember the thought, quote, or idea. Very novel. We were I think we were the first, according to Audible, to record a book with photography on a verbal audio platform. What do I have to do, Danielle? Every 135 pictures, I have to speak to you for what that picture is saying, not only to me, but to you as you read the thoughts, quotes, and ideas on the other side. Let me show you. So I just did a podcast in this book.
Yeah,
you see, there's an image. So there's a nature, there's a sunset, or I don't know if you can kind of see it. And then on this side,
I see. It's like a lake, right, or a river.
A river, yes.
Yeah.
So you read thought, and if you like one of these thoughts, quotes, and ideas, what legacy do you aspire to leave behind? A question. Oh, I really like that. And you'll tie that thought, quote, or idea to this image. You're not going to love all the thoughts, quotes, and ideas, but if you love that one, you'll tie it to the image. So it's very visual, but how do you do that on an Audible platform? We did it and knocked it out of the park. So long story to your short question. You have to be able to riff. You have to be able to drive home a point that you know, if you're a consumer, that you would want to hear more of if you're recording a book in audio form.
Yeah, you know what? I think it actually speaks a lot towards just the authenticity of your message too, because, the fact that you're able to kind of take your idea and go in many directions on your own concept and keep building, more and more from it. It just shows that like your idea has a foundation that like could really just, go in multiple ways and relate to many people. So, even if you're going off script, like it's just proving another point of just like the reason behind your message has value to it, because it's not just something that you like, what should I tell people, but more so like something you believe. At least that's kind of how I'm seeing it as, the ability that you're able to riff and make those additional comments about it. It goes to say something.
I know you got some prepared questions, but since we're on this kind of author tangent right now.
Yeah, no, see, the thing with my podcast, I love to go on tangents too. If we don't get to our questions, it's okay, because what's important is that we're passionate about what we're talking about and that our listeners can find some value from it. Because I mean, right now, this is a topic that we don't usually talk about on the show, like the whole idea of podcasting and those kind of tips that you have. So please, like, what more you have?
Well, it just while we're on the kind of the author theme, maybe some people are watching this and think, I want to be an author, but I'm not, or I have a book idea that I've started to, sketch out an outline. Our entire lives, ever since we were children, we've been taught to read. It's important to read. I love to read. I say, and I'm asked to talk because I've written a young reader fantasy novel, for kids. I go to schools all the time. I say, write. Everybody has a story to tell. And with print on demand now, I'm helping a 91-year-old guy basically write his memoir before he passes. He doesn't want to sell them. He don't care if he sells them. You could go to print on demand and print like one book and or 10 books and give them to your grandkids or great grandkids to tell your story. It's so much easier. Matter of fact, I bought the rights back. I own the rights to 7 of my 9 books, and we publish them under Caring House Books, because all the money that I make from my books goes to our Caring House Foundation, which we'll talk about later. I don't make any money from my books. But please, if you have a story that needs to be told, don't give up until you get that story written out. Don't worry about the publishing part. Don't worry about agents right now. That's the last thing. Get that manuscript outline. If you want to get into how I write a book, we can do that later. I'm very visual, so I have to design the cover before I even write the first word. Sometimes it takes months to get that. So the cover of Aspire and the title, Aspire, How to Create Your Own Reality and Alter Your DNA, that comes first. Then I write the back cover copy, because this is what sells it. This is the summary, everything on the back cover. I design the cover, and then I set it up as I'm writing or typing. I set the book up on so it's facing me. So guess what? Every word I write delivers on the promise of the title and the subtitle. Every word I write, there were 111,000 words in that book, delivers on the promise of Aspire, How to Create Your Own Reality and Alter Your DNA. I can't write the first word until I have the cover designed and in front of me.
Yeah, that's really interesting to think about, because I mean, at the end of the day, we all know that everybody learns differently. Everybody works differently. I mean, for me, like, what helps me is I listen to some chill hop music or something, right? But for you, you're visual. You noticed before you mentioned, like, you have to look at like a doll when you're doing your audiobooks, or now you're looking at the book cover. Like, it's almost like you're inspired by seeing it right in front of you. And I think like a lot of our listeners can probably say the same thing, because, they see something they like, and they probably think it might be like a backwards method to kind of visualize that ending cover before the content. But I see where you're going with that, because it gives you your end goal, almost a structure to kind of match.
It's almost like in the real estate business, not almost like, it is exactly like in the real estate. When I was designing these we did a house once that was 32,000 square feet, 22 bathrooms, 18 bedrooms, and a 12-car garage. And so I can't read plans as you would think most, builders, designers, architects, whatever I am, would do. I had to go out in the field. I had to see the layout and have my guys like plot out the living room and the size of the living room. And I could say, no, that's too big, that's too small. So I am a visual person. Because I didn't do well in school, 4 high schools in 4 years, and I never had a chance to pursue a formal education. The visual part helps me with the aspirational part, which is what we started this little riff on. Please get your book on paper. Go to Kindle or KDP, which is, the Amazon's publishing entity, or whatever you want to use, Lightning Spark, and write it. Your story is worth being told. I tell this to kids, and I've got a 12-year-old that's writing their first book that I'm helping out. So I read, of course, but write. I'll tell you what, reading is reactive, writing is proactive in the brain.
I like that. That's a quote they should probably put on a poster that goes in the classrooms of those kids that you speak to at the elementary schools. Aside from doing my ghostwriting, editing, everything here at the Authors on Mission, I also have taught for many years too. So I can just picture a lot of my students sitting there in the assembly and looking at you with your crazy rock star hair and being just so inspired to write books, based on what you've been doing and wanting to be like you and aspire to be. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners hearing your experiences and your success from it are feeling the same way right now, to be honest. So, that's pretty awesome. And you're able to just kind of riff off and come up with these cool quotes just like that right off the bat.
Well, so, I didn't know what you guys did at Authors on Mission, but now that I hear that you help I don't use the word ghostwriter. I use the word, I have collaborated.
We call it angel writers, actually.
Angel, but you are a true collaborator, because I have collaborated with somebody, sentence conjugation, structure, grammar, dialogue. If I'm writing, a fiction book, that's really hard to write. And so I think it's critical to use somebody like you as a collaborator. I've been, I might have an ego, but I will, on many of my books, put my collaborator's name on the front, because if it's not for you guys, we wouldn't be there. And the current book I'm working on, which I can't talk about because it's not going to come out for, maybe almost a year. It's my 10th, and it'll take me in a direction, a deep, deep direction I've never gone in before. My collaborator is she's kind of slow in responding, but she is, when I say collaborate, I am not dictating the entire book. We're researching and we're doing, going deep, and I love her ideas. I don't want her just to be a puppet, a transcriber, a scrivener. I want collaboration. And so some of the best I've worked with, and I've worked with, I've had 9 books. I've worked with a collaborator on all of them, not always the same one because of the genres. There's kind of people that specialize in different ones. But I think if you are writing a book is a business. Within the 4 corners of this book is a business. You have to understand the business of publishing, and you understand that today it's Thursday. I know this thing isn't going to come out Friday, but tomorrow, whatever day you're watching this is, tomorrow there'll be over 3,000 new titles published that weren't published today. That's how, when I first got in the business, it was 625 new books every day. It's over 3,000, and a lot of that exploded during COVID. So you need to be able to market your book, the 4 corners of your book, like a business, because you're competing with 3,000 plus new titles every single day.
Yeah, well, so many things I want to say branching off of what you just said. And I guess what I'm going to choose is just the fact that the collaboration is exactly what we do here in Authors on Mission. And it's funny because you're right. My role really is collaborator. I'm not just an angel writer or an editor or a podcaster or a blog poster. I do it all. And in a way, I'm collaborating with all of my clients in many different ways. I'm not just writing their books, because I'm also editing it for them, and we're talking together. I'm helping them come up with their ideas, the plot. It's a lot more than that. That's the thing too. It's it's your original content always, right? But I'm your team member. I'm your partner. We're collaborating together. I like that word a lot. It's something that, yeah, it's a new way of thinking about it. It kind of puts, more value into the work we do together as a team. Some you just need someone by your back to help you out, because you know, a lot of us are very independent. We can do it on our own, but you know, sometimes you just need someone to help you out of it, someone to run ideas by, whether it
It's
be a professional company or just another friend.
it's more than that. It is really, I want somebody that brings out the best in me. So yes, the concepts are always mine. The genres have very, actually we're creating a, I would let this out, psycho spiritual thriller. This is a new genre that I'm trying to create for this 10th book. It's a novel. But I want that person, that collaborator, to draw out of me things that I can't do on my own. You can't. It's very difficult to write. Nobody writes in a vacuum. I don't care if you're Stephen King or J.K. Rowling. You are not writing in a vacuum. There are people that are going to look at your content. I want someone maybe your age. My collaborator is a little bit older. I run my stuff by my daughter all the time because I want to make sure I'm writing. She's 26, to be relevant to that demographic. So it's really critical to involve a collaborator. Listen, even if you can't afford it, and I don't know, what your rates are and stuff. And I couldn't afford it really. Well, I guess I could at the beginning, but it's really important to have somebody like you.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, I guess in terms of the pricing, it really is. We cater it to whatever you might need. Some people might only need some editing work. Other people are looking to start from scratch. Some people, like you just mentioned, need more ideas and to expand their mindset. And so, I mean, like, it kind of just based on that. And it's when you think about the long-term benefits of it, sometimes it's just, beyond belief. But aside from that aspect of it, what you mentioned before about running it by somebody, I mean, in terms of relatability to different age groups, of course, like that's a huge factor. Like, you can ask people in your own, circle, but, other people in other industries who have been there forever, that's a huge factor to consider too. They know what people want to read or what might resonate with them or might sell. Or, in the case of the 90-year-old man that you're helping with his biography, offering other perspectives can also just give more perspective into what his family might want to see in the book and that sort of thing too. So it goes a long way in many different areas.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Well, Frank, should we sort of circle back and kind of hone in a little bit on your book in particular? I love it. I love riffing with my authors all the time. It's very much very exciting because we never know what we're going to get into. But you have a lot of crazy, interesting things to talk about here. So I figure we should probably, dive into it. So in Aspire, the first thing that I noticed in your book, of course, is the quote from Rocket Man about killing the man that you were born to be. Tell us a little about that, and how does that relate to your transformation story? And what did you use to start your book that way?
I wanted to use that as a subtitle. I didn't know until I looked it up, kill the person you're born to be to become the person you want to be. As it was a quote from a movie. It's perfect. Aspire, how to create your own reality and alter your DNA. Pretty much sums up the quote from the movie Rocket Man. Kill the person you were born to be to become the person you want to be. I love the abruptness of that quote. I love the violence contained in that quote. And when I watched the clip on the movie, the way that his manager, I'm not going to get into movie stuff because a lot of people didn't see the movie, but the manager basically grabs Elton John and says, kill the person you're born to be, become the person you want to be. And look what happened to him, right? And so I did just that when I got on the plane from Indiana at 18 with $50 in my pocket, and all I could fit on my back was a backpack full of clothes after leaving that juvenile detention center for the 7th time and my 4th high school in 4 years with a 1-point GPA. I said to myself, I know one of the questions I glossed over said something about how did you have the courage to do that? I had no choice. My parents kicked me out. They said, I'm the oldest of 6. You're ruining the family with the way that you're behaving. And so they put me on a plane, a one-way ticket plane with the $50 bill and the stuff in my backpack. And I made a conscious decision when I landed in Florida to do that. Like, I was tired of the revolving door of getting in trouble and not doing well in school. And I had nobody to fall back on when I landed in Florida. At 18, having $50 in your pocket it's not like that's not even a special story. Like, who has more than $50 when they're 18? But I decided to stop causing my beautiful mother to turn prematurely gray because of my behavior. I looked, because I couldn't go to school, Danielle. I had no community college that would take me. I started to, I was a maintenance worker on a golf course, and then I became a tennis instructor. So I was around affluence. In Boca Raton, I taught at some very affluent communities. And the story I tell, and I'll go very quickly, as a tennis instructor, I'm teaching very rich people how to hit a forehand and a backhand, a fuzzy little yellow ball better. And yet I went to school on them. So if you paid me for an hour tennis lesson, Danielle, I made sure, and I've written about this. It's not something, actually, I'm kind of proud of it, but it is a little bit of a, conspiracy ripoff. I would tire you out after 45 minutes. So you couldn't finish your tennis lesson. I'd sit down and I'd pick your brain. Danielle, how'd you get here? You drove up to the lesson in a Ferrari. You've got a beautiful, whatever, husband, Richard Gere, or whoever was young back then, beautiful husband. You've got 2 kids, you've got a yacht, you've got a mansion. Like, how did you do that? And I went to school on my students while I was teaching them how they got to where they were. Over a 2-year span, I earned my PhD in entrepreneurship and my master's in real estate right there on that tennis court. And that's where
you definitely got more than what you were expecting just by signing up for that job. You just kind of took the opportunity and you made the most of it, just knowing you were around people who can give you this kind of tips.
Well, it was my own business. I didn't work for anybody, so I was able to, kind of. You paid me for an hour, and I made sure you were too tired after 45 minutes, and we would talk. And people who are successful, obviously, we like to talk. We will talk. We will write. We will talk. And these people would talk to me. And that's where I really got I really saw my DNA changing from what I was as a teenager into a very disciplined, swore off all unhealthy vices and temptations at the age of, in my early 20s. So, I became what I watched on that tennis court. I became the people. I talk about in the book sampling DNA, like basically walking down the beach and putting your footsteps into somebody else's footsteps that you want to emulate. Who do you aspire to emulate is a chapter title in Inspire. I think it's chapter 2. It's at the beginning. Who do you aspire to emulate? That helps you answer the question, what legacy do you aspire to leave behind? And these were things that wouldn't have happened, Danielle, had I not decided to, in my words, create my own reality and alter my DNA versus the Rocket Man quote, kill the person you were born to become the person you want to be. If you like the person you were born to be, disregard that advice. I didn't like the person. I was born to be one of 2 things. My father was a banker. My grandfather was a banker. I was going to be a banker. Or a criminal. I wasn't good at being a criminal because I kept getting put in juvenile detention. And do I look like a banker? Like, I'm not going to make it as a banker. So I wanted to create a reality and alter a DNA that I didn't want to have.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different aspects to, unpack about that as well. I mean, I think what's resonating with me the most still is just the fact that, you created the business, to teach lessons for tennis, right? Many people probably would have just been like, okay, like I'm a tennis instructor. I got this good gig. That's it, done. But I love the way that you scheduled out the time. There's 15 minutes. You made sure they were tired enough so you can continue improving yourself and improving, what would come next for you. And eventually it led to writing your books, and here you are now. But I think that's just another tip we should all learn from too, is maximizing the opportunities that you have. Right.
You create a job, don't get a job. I told that to my daughter, and she did in Manhattan. She couldn't get a job after COVID, so she created a job. I created these opportunities where I was so intoxicated with learning from people who walk the talk. These weren't gurus. These were people who walk the talk. And you were right, Danielle. I had at 21 years old, a long time ago, I was making $100,000 a year as a tennis instructor and driving a Ferrari, coming from juvenile detention just like 3 years before. It was a great job.
That sounds perfect. You've got it set. Happily ever after.
Most people would have thought that. And I honestly, in the moment I thought that, but then I realized there's a limit to how much money I can make on the tennis court because there's so many hours in the day and the sun's up and I'm teaching tennis. I can only do so many hours in a day. And the real money that these people were making was made based upon not their 9 to 5. Like my 9 to 5 was a tennis instructor. Their 9 to 5 was a doctor or a lawyer. The discretionary money they took and invested in real estate outside of their 9 to 5 is what caused them to live the lifestyle they were living. That's what I learned. And so eventually $100,000 a year on the tennis court, because I didn't just quit tennis and go into real estate. I teach a few hours and then I go renovate crack houses and sell them for 50 grand and go back and teach a few hours. And then eventually I realized the tennis court was costing me money, even though I was making money. I would do better in pursuing the career in real estate. I
think that's just an inspiring thing. I think that all of our listeners today who are also, business people, wanting to follow in these sorts of footsteps, want to make it big, already have made it big, and are looking for the next thing in their life. I mean, we all share the same mindset, I feel like, there's people who enjoy watching Netflix and relaxing, which is great, but there's also the people who know, there's more out there to improve. And I feel like I relate to a lot in that. As I mentioned before, I'm still teaching. I came right from the school and came to do this. And after this, I'm going to be writing books and doing more. Sleep's not exactly on the schedule, right? But I'm loving what I'm doing aside from it. And, I've never been more fulfilled in my life. You know what I mean? Finding a passion, writing and helping people, learning their stories. It's, you'd think I'm a teacher. I'm happy. It's great. But so much more. I don't know.
You will find, you're young, right? You're in your 20s or maybe 30?
I am 29.
All right. So you'll find that passion will lead to purpose. Passion's kind of an overused word. I could have passion for chocolate, and it's not really great for me. But once the passion leads to purpose, a life without purpose, if we don't have purpose, we replace it with pleasure. And sometimes pleasure is just laziness. It could be destructive. A lot of things that pleasure is not really great for. Once you find a purpose, the pleasure comes from the purpose, not just from the pure pleasure of it. And so, I found a purpose. I know one of your questions was about, this addictive personality or something about that.
You said it was addiction to excitement.
So this is something, this isn't something I wear with honor. It's something my therapist told me that, I was very curious while I was younger, going into juvenile detention all the time and going on to all these high schools and really disrupting my family. And after she dug a little deeper, she says, look, you're all your life, you've been addicted to excitement. When you were younger, you found a destructive outlet for that addiction to exciting things. I'm stealing cars and all the bad things I did when I was younger. I found it. Here's the big takeaway. You do not have to change. You can't change unless you're under 12 years old. According to every psychiatrist has ever written about it, your core personality is formed between the ages of 4 and 12. So who Danielle is today is who she will be at her core for the rest of her life. Same thing with Frank. He had this tendency to take these risks and then found a destructive outlet for that tendency to take, risks. I found a constructive outlet for what used to be a destructive tendency. Building houses on speculation, meaning I build a $10 million house and I don't know if I'm going to be eating out of a dumpster or at Ruth Chris Steakhouse. That's very exciting for me. That is, and I got really good at it, and I'm making money at it. But Danielle, I really never changed. What I did is what you all can do. You can, if you accept the fact and quit using all your energy to try to change who you are. Who you are is perfectly good, beautiful, blessed, and whole, just as you are. If you're having struggle, redirect or reignite. In my case, I redirected what was destructive, this addiction to risk and excitement, and directed it into something constructive. I've never changed. For many people who were brought up in a home of suppression, maybe you had a bad childhood, your parents weren't there for you. Everybody's got a story because we're formed in our young years, our youth years. If you were brought up in a very repressive environment, if you had a dream at age 6 to be Wonder Woman, yet that was suppressed under a horrible childhood, you need to reignite. It's still there, Danielle. It's still there, listener. You reignite or redirect. You do not have to change.
I like you're emphasizing that too. Just like I was saying before, I could do so much more than just watching Netflix, like I said, but you don't have to change yourself. You can still enjoy doing those things you like to do. But like you said, reignite and, find a way to just continue on, keep breaking the ceiling of yourself and keep improving to something new, because that doesn't necessarily mean that you're changing yourself, just finding out what else is out there for you that you might love doing. And that could bring you great happiness. So
the reason we titled this book Aspire is because motivation washes off and goes down the drain with the soap at night. Quit beating yourself up over the fact that you can't stay motivated. As a species, we can't stay motivated. We are not wired to stay motivated. I can't stay motivated. That's why there's billions and billions. There's multi-billion dollar industry out there built around motivation, self-help tapes, self-help books, going to seminars. You cannot stay motivated. That's why I didn't call it motivate. If I motivated you an hour, that will wash off and go down the drain with your shower tonight, like soap. That's how motivation works. Read a motivational quote. How long does that last? You can scroll to the next thing on your Instagram feed and it's gone. Okay, Frank, I got that. How about inspiration? Why didn't you call it inspire, Frank? Inspiration is a little deeper than motivation. If you watch an inspirational movie or read an inspirational book, it'll stick with you. And I liken it to a sunburn. I actually got a little sunburn. I liken it, so you get a sunburn and eventually, like in a week or two, it wears off. It's the same thing with inspiration. It dissipates. So while motivation washes off, inspiration dissipates after a period of time. Aspiration, truly, I aspired to be a best-selling author, although I never went to school. I aspired to run the toughest foot race in the world, yet I really wasn't that kind of athlete. I aspired to have a family, been married 34 years, because mine was kind of a little bit broken. I aspired to run a charity in the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, that being Haiti. These are things, I might not be motivated to train for a 100-mile race every day. And I'm certainly not inspired to get up at 3 a.m. and go train 20 miles on the road. But I'll never lose the aspiration that allows me to create my own reality and alter my DNA. Latch onto, and that's why if you get the book, the first section is broken down. There's 5 sections in this book, broken down into teaching you and showing you the difference between motivation, inspiration, and aspiration. Aspiration is like a Fabergé egg. It's sacred. Like, no matter what happens to me for the rest of my life, the aspiration of becoming a best-selling author can't be taken away. That's an aspiration fulfilled. It's not a goal. It's not a bucket list. It's not a check it off the list. It's something that you look to every single day, although you won't have the motivation or inspiration to do so.
Yeah, I can see that. It's almost like, how you enjoy, well, you usually put like the book cover next to you on your computer because you're aspiring to finish that book and, knowing the direction you want it to take. You're, knowing that you have that and you're visualizing it and you're keeping it in your head, it helps you get there. That's, I guess, what aspiring is. That's different than inspire, right? So knowing that even if you're not motivated, it's still there. That dream's still there for you and you're not giving up on it. You're just working towards it.
Answer the question, if you do get the book, or you don't get the book, what legacy do you aspire to leave behind? And if it's a beautiful herb garden, then great. But we have to have these aspirations in life that outlive our motivation and our inspiration.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, clearly you have just like a ton of that in your life. And I'm sure a lot of it came from that, difficult childhood where you were, kicked out of schools, unfortunately, and, had to move around a lot, the, juvenile detention as well. I'm wondering, would you say for yourself that aspiration for you drives from that, sort of like as a, a desire to do better by your younger self, or would you say it's something you just always kind of had?
You know what? That's deep, or
maybe too personal, but
I don't know. I'll answer anything. I'm an open book, but that's like a therapist question. I would say that my father was a gold, silver, and bronze medalist in the 56 and 60 Olympics. He was one of the youngest bank presidents in the history of the United States. So there was and I'm the oldest of 6. I'm Frank McKinney III. He's Frank McKinney Jr. There's probably a little bit of, the reason I left Indiana, besides being asked to leave by my parents, is I needed to get out from underneath that legacy and create Frank McKinney III's legacy. I didn't even go by Frank for many years. I went by my nickname, Mickey. Mickey wasn't a good business name, so I changed it to Frank when I started doing real estate. I didn't change it. That was my legal name. But yeah, I think there's, I'm learning, and I was so keen on this when I was raising my daughter, how to be a good father and how to, I walk my daughter to school every single day, and my young reader fantasy novel was based on this truth. I'm going to tell you, every work in fiction, for you authors out there writing fiction or novels, is rooted in some form of reality. Take Stephen King, some form of all those cool books is rooted in some form of reality. I walk my daughter to school every single day from pre-K to 8th grade. 1,652 times I walked her almost mile to school she never sat in the backseat of a car. So after that was done, and I even drove her first 2 years of high school until she got her license, every day. So we created this book together, Dead Fred, Flying Lunchboxes, and the Good Luck Circle. It's a young reader fantasy novel. Came out at the time of Potter, Twilight, Hunger Games, Narnia. But that experience was probably born of the childhood I wish, or the father I wish I would have had. Those were the most precious years of my life, walking her to school every day. And do you think she was brought up? I mean, she started her own company at 24. She was the student body president of Penn State of 46,000 kids. I mean, all the stuff we did really paid off. And so a lot of our, I guess, our adult life is based upon what we had or didn't have as young people, as children.
Yeah, and I can see why that definitely got a little bit deeper than maybe we were thinking it would have. But I guess you're right. Again, at the end of the day, it really is rooted back to, our experiences as children. But I mean, kind of tying that back to the whole writing thing, it's those experiences that in a way enhance our writing and the meaning we put into it. I mean, and that's sort of how you develop this whole Aspire concept, because of what you experienced back then. And of course, events leading up to it and just your nature in itself as well. It's an accumulation of it all. But, it's always important to think about these things, because as a writer, it's not always that your writing could just appear on the screen, right? You need to think about what am I going to say? Where is it coming from? Why am I thinking this? There's a lot to consider. So,
if you kind of subdivide my subtitle into two sections, how to create your own reality / and alter your DNA. I was a little concerned, still am, at how others allow so many, like the screens, I call them the three screens, screen number 1, screen number 2, and screen number 3 is your TV. How they allow those three screens to dictate their reality. And I realized, wow, I never did that. I'm on the phone a lot and all. I'm on social media, but I worked, actually I still do in North Carolina, out of a treehouse, Danielle. I wrote all of my books out of a treehouse.
Yeah, was it a glass treehouse?
Well, the one in North Carolina is all glass. The one in Florida that we lived in for 25 years, the treehouse was part of our main house in Florida, but that's the house I walked my daughter to school from. The treehouse is in my young reader fantasy novel. It's in a lot of my books. But I wanted an environment where I didn't have the naysayers and the negativity and the water cooler talk. Even when I was designing these beautiful mansions, I wanted to create my own reality instead of letting outside forces do so. If I wanted to create a Balinesian or a Tahitian or a Fijian or an Italian French design in my architecture, I wouldn't go to books. I would go to Fiji or Tahiti or Hawaii or Italy or France to be inspired by that kind of architecture. So my reality isn't from just picking up a book and looking at photos. I'm going to go to the source of where that style of architecture was derived, so I can feel the same feeling that architect felt when he was designing that house 200 years ago, 300 years ago.
I mean, that's something like a luxury that a lot of people wish they can do. Especially as a writer, a lot of people would love to just be like, you know what, I need to be inspired by the buildings in Rome right now. I'm just going to go fly out there and check it out. But I mean, fortunately, you were able to do that and, experience that and see that, and it helped you by actually going there physically. So that's something that's a great tip if you have the opportunity to.
If you can't afford to do it, let's use a really abstract example. I watch the Hallmark Channel. I love the Hallmark Channel, and my wife and I watch the Hallmark Channel. It's why, because it's always happy. But now, and I like the stories, but I'll look at it for the setting. If you're watching a movie that is one of your favorite movies, look beyond the storyline. Look at the setting. Look at, if it was filmed in Italy, look at the buildings. Look beyond just the two characters talking on the screen. Some of these settings, like the Hallmark Channel, I know it's kind of embarrassing, but I love it, are overseas now, and I get to see Ireland. I've never been to Ireland. I'm looking at the landscape versus I like the stories, don't get me wrong, but I'm looking beyond just the story.
That's an amazing tip. You can do it just from your living room or anywhere. I mean, I traveled this whole past summer to all different places, through Europe and Asia. And let me tell you, I mean, you're right. Going to these places and seeing the amazing culture shifts and architecture and just scenery in general, from the mountains in Santorini to the busy Tokyo streets, right? Wherever you are, it's different vibes and it's helping you write because, it's maybe heightening creativity in one way or another. But if that's something you can't do, then go on the TV, go onto YouTube. I literally actually the other day found this video, a 2-hour walking tour through the Tokyo rain. Somebody just strapped a phone on his head and was just walking through the streets in the rain for 2 hours on YouTube. And I was like, this is so cool because you can see what it's like, even if you can't go there. And right away, you're now inspired and you know what it's like and you don't even have to be there. So
that's a great idea. That's a great tip.
Yeah, it's actually really cool. You should check it out. I'm like, this is
actually
really satisfying.
I have seen that. I have seen that.
Yeah, it's so cool. I'm
Absolutely.
like, this is so simple, but fascinating.
Good
So,
tip.
yeah. Well, I mean, hey, I feel like we didn't quite touch upon, everything we had sort of planned for our questions today, but I feel like we had a lot of very important, content covered in terms of writing and process and, how our listeners today could, find meaning and, aspire to continue to improve themselves based on what you've talked about today. Now, I'm wondering, what kind of piece of advice do you have that we haven't touched upon yet that you might want to make sure that we do leave our listeners with today? What do you think?
Oh, well, we talked about
Loaded question.
That's all right. Everybody, don't lose sight of the fact that your book, your idea, your concept matters. Get it out there. In life, everybody watching this, listening to this, you will have regrets. Flat out, you're going to have regrets. The very first quote in this is coffee table size book, Aspirational Thoughts, Inspirational Images. Very first quote on page whatever one is. If you're going to have regrets, which you will, regret what you did, not what you didn't do. In other words, I wrote my book, I put it out there, and I didn't sell any copies, but at least I've got some for myself. Like, I don't want you to sit in your rocking chair at age 80 on your front porch and say, man, I really regret never writing that book. Regret what you did, not, if you're going to have them, not what you didn't do. And to do that, and I know we don't have much time, you've got to exercise your risk tolerance. You've got to exercise your risk threshold like a muscle, like going to the gym. Exercise your risk threshold like a muscle. Eventually it becomes stronger and able to withstand greater pressure. I might not have been the smartest. I'm still afraid every day of my life. I'm trying something new, a new spec house, a new genre, but I recognize fear as the opportunity to take advantage of a big change or challenge. When we think about a big change or challenge in our life, Danielle, the first sensation we feel is fear. That fear is associated with the thought of taking on a big change or challenge. Once we take on that big change or challenge in the form of risk, fear is replaced with joy. So remember, it's the thought of taking the risk that creates the fear. Once you take the risk, the fear goes away.
Yeah, and it seems like a concept that, we might know, like, in our brains, kind of like, it makes sense, like fear is going to be gone if you know what it's like. By nature, fear is something we don't know about, right? But once you get knowing more, you become more comfortable with it. When it comes to writing, like we've talked about a bunch, like if you're nervous about it, you said this in the beginning of the podcast, like just get it out there. You're going to regret it if you don't. Again, regret not, doing it, but not doing it is worse.
It's worse. And remember, when you think about jumping in, whatever it is, we're talking about books, but it could be any of the things I've been involved with. You've heard this, and this is misspoken, it's misplaced, it's untrue. Fear of the unknown. You can't fear something you don't know. What you fear is leaving the known. That's exactly what you think about that. How could you fear something you don't know? You fear leaving the known. You fear leaving the comfort zone. Let's say you really wanted to write your whole life, but you don't want to leave the comfort of the classroom. I wasn't sure I wanted to leave a $100,000 a year tennis teaching job to start in real estate. You can't fear something you don't know. You fear leaving what you do know.
Yeah, and if that fear really does seem like gripping and something that you can't quite get over, to all of our listeners, I mean, we talked about before the importance of collaboration, of teamwork. I mean, Authors on Mission, we're able to help you if they're feeling a little nervous, like, oh no, what if I don't have a good idea? Or like, what if my writing's not, perfectly grammar? And, what if nobody wants to buy it after the fact? I mean, these are all simple questions that we can help you with, just having a support system by your side, to make sure your book has all the content there, that it's well organized, correct flow, and that you can bring it to whatever audience you're looking for. I mean, our services help you out there. And Frank, I know you said like you've worked with many different people too. It can be somebody in your own personal circle, sometimes just running it off somebody else. So that collaboration helps you ease the fear also. Something to... You're
going to have fear. You're going to be afraid of something anyway. And if you're thinking picking up the phone and calling you guys, and I didn't even really know what you did before this thing, so now I get it. Don't let the fear of the thought of collaborating keep you from picking up the phone and calling these guys or somebody, because you've got to, at least you've got to the point where you've got an idea for a book. A lot of people don't even get that far. So, exercise that risk threshold like a muscle. It'll become stronger and you'll be able to withstand greater pressure.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, if you ever, as you continue on with your other book, I know you have, another book that you have in mind coming out next year. If you ever want to run ideas by us, if there's anything to help you with, we're more than happy to, collaborate. I know you have a whole system going on. You've written a lot of books, but it's always good to run ideas by some new faces too. So just keep that in mind also. And for all of our listeners out there, if you're also inspired, I mean, we're here to help. We're here because we love books, and obviously by the name, we're on a mission to make sure that everybody gets their ideas out and can share their stories. And, just like that 90-year-old person that you're helping, everybody has something to share to some sort of audience. So keep it in mind, and don't let fear hold you back.
That's right. Do it. Write that book.
Awesome. Well, Frank, hold that book up one more time for all of our listeners today, because, they're going to want to check it out on Amazon if they've heard about your life and all these concepts. It's probably you can purchase it on Amazon, bookstores too, I'm assuming, anywhere else, and the audiobook as well. And where else can we find you at, Frank? Any social media handles we can look you up at?
Yes, I just want to add one thing. I mean, not everybody's going to have to do this. 9 books, 8 genres. Every book I sell, we've built 32 self-sustaining villages in Haiti, taking care of over 14,400 kids who were eating mud patties flavored with bouillon and lemon juice, eating dirt for their meals. Now they have a self-sustaining existence. One book typically will buy about 100 meals in one of our orphanages or one of our 32 villages. So, talk about purpose. Talk about, aspiring to help more than just me put money in my bank because I sell a bunch of books. Tie something like that to the release of your book. Find a cause that's near and dear to your heart. We happen to have our own charity, but that fact, and you can go to answer your question. You can go to Frank-McKinney, McKinney.com. PC Magazine is called our website Disney on a Desktop, because you can take a tour of all 9 books. You can read sample chapters. You can listen to sample Audible chapters before you were to buy them. You can tour 32 of our villages in Haiti. You can see some of the mansions we've built, some of the the interviews we've been on. So you'll spend hours on there, and that's the best way to get kind of like acclimated to what I do. And if you want to, buy a book, you can buy it from Amazon. We still get some some money from our royalties that go to the Caring House. You buy it from us, we get a little bit more. I don't care, whatever's easiest for you. But the most important thing is to get your book out, and if you can't get it out, to call Danielle and have her collaborate with you.
Well, honestly, listeners, I mean, Frank's purpose here goes beyond what we could have even considered for ourselves in your own books. I mean, he was able to not only take his passion, his ideas, but he's helping other people with it too, like just the hugest scale possible. I mean, why did you end with that and not lead with that? It's something I knew by looking at your website and everything, but to our listeners, like, wow, I mean, that's a huge thing too. I guess it's almost like, you got to get your message out there first before they know like the true purpose behind it, because it's many different factors. But
I will leave you with this.
Yeah, you should have told us.
Well, if you happen to be religious, this is a passage from the Bible. Do not let that turn you off. I'm a Christian, so I believe in the words of the Bible. If you are an atheist, agnostic, Hindu, Muslim, Jew, I don't care. There's a passage from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 12, verse 48, that says, "To whom much is entrusted, much is required. To whom much is given, much is expected." That doesn't have to be a Bible passage. That is a great life mantra. Forget it came out of the Bible. This is something that I might look like I have 2 tattoos. I have no tattoos. That would be something that I would put on my body. To whom much is entrusted, much is required. To whom much is given, much is expected. I was given a lot, right? Juvenile and bad high school experience. It was incumbent upon me to be a responsible steward for the blessings God had given me. And that wasn't about putting more cars in my garage, clothes in my closet, or food in my pantry. It was about taking the blessings and sharing with those who will likely never succeed at my level. And that's where Caring House was born. And that's where we've been over in Haiti for next year will be 25 years. We built these 32 self-sustaining villages. My daughter's going to actually take over the charity next year. So that's my purpose, my bigger purpose. We didn't have time to go into all the issues I've had in real estate and the down moments and the times that I really felt like it was. But when I realized I could change a life, I mean, one book is 100 meals in one of our orphanages. Skip a latte for a day, $4.75. I can buy a chicken in one of our self-sustaining villages. So that's what writing has brought me. I made money in real estate. I didn't need to make money from my books. Could have made more money if I took all the royalties, but that was the way that we funded our carrying house and with donors all these years. So to whom much is entrusted, much is expected. To whom much is given, much is required.
Frank, that you're definitely somebody that's unique on my show, because a lot of people talk about my book help my business, my book spread my message, and it's all very notable, very important things that all of our listeners today, like, yes, it really does benefit that, but this is taking it a step beyond. And something that anybody could do too. Find a cause that you want to help and find a way to let your book benefit that, because I talk about all the time how your book could be leveraged in different media streams. Like you can do TED Talks and podcasts and, social media articles from your book, but taking your book.
Danielle, here's what we should do. Once you put this out there and if it's well received, we do an encore, and we should do an encore on the marketing. How you market, once your book's out, how do you market the book so you can fulfill the purpose, whatever your purpose is? If it's grow your business, and build your brand and all that kind of stuff, great. How do you get seen above or with or better than those other 3,000 books that are come out tomorrow? That's critical. We don't have time to do it today, but we should do that.
Yeah, I know. It's a shame that we only have an hour today, but you're right. I mean, it would be so great to dive into that, because at Authors on Mission, we really are amazing with, taking what you have and spreading it into whatever audience or medium you're hoping to gain from your book. But, not everybody knows every avenue it really could be. You're helping all these people in Haiti. Who knows what our listeners today could potentially help out in another cause from their book without realizing it now. So that's something great we can talk about. And I'd like that. I'll shoot you an email. We'll schedule another one. And
you do it. Two minutes. If this place, I did a book tour, 85 homeless shelters, 70 cities, 60 days, 11,990 miles. 85 homeless shelters in 70 days. I'm sorry, in 70 cities in 60 days. So this book is about hope. I'm delivering hope. It's a very unconventional book tour. What do you think latched onto that book tour? The media. Because I didn't go to a single bookstore. All I did was care facilities, homeless shelters, soup kitchens, food pantries, detention centers, abused women's facilities, veterans facilities, treatment facilities, LGBTQ facilities. I went there and delivered a message of hope. What do you think the media did? They jumped on board. Netflix handed us a camera and said, we want to film this as a documentary. So of course it's going to sell books. I want to sell books because that's 100 more meals every book I sell. Yet it was and this isn't the first tour I've done like that. We'll get into the marketing another time, because yes, you do, for most of you, except for my 91-year-old friend I'm helping, you want to sell your book. You want people to read your story. How do you get out there and get that story told? And so you can increase your book sales. I know we've gone way over time, but that is so important.
Yeah, I mean, Frank, you're inspiring, and there's so many things I want to talk to you about. We didn't even get to talk about like the big competition you did, the marathon. What was it called? The marathon? The big marathon you did?
Oh, the Badwater Ultra Marathon.
Yeah, like, oh my God, I want to hear all about that. I mean, like, as somebody who likes to run marathons, I'm sure it's totally different than what I did. But I mean, on that, and like Jimmy Fallon making fun of you, man. I mean, that was crazy too. So we'll table that for next time. I really want to learn more about this, but I'll shoot you an email and we'll rearrange. And to all of our listeners, get ready for part 2.
I think we got a lot more. You're an unbelievable host. If you're half as good a host as you are a collaborator, then I think people would be very fortunate to work with you.
Well, thank you for that. And right back at you. I mean, you're a true rock star in the field yourself. So, well, with that, Frank, have a great night. And to all of our listeners today, thank you for tuning in. This brings us to the end of our conversation for now with Frank. So as a closing, from juvenile detentions to real estate innovation, from ultra marathons, which we will touch upon next time, to his work in Haiti, Frank's journey reminds us that our past doesn't define our future, and that all you have to do is not let fear inhibit you. You have to aspire to reach your own goals in life, just as Aspire has told us, and it's out on Amazon now, so check it out. Remember that every purchase you make from Frank helps people out in Haiti. It's important, even if it's like you mentioned, Frank, the price of a chicken sandwich. Like if you can do that, go ahead and help. You can feed everybody out there. So all in all, Thank you, Frank, for sharing your story and wisdom with us today. And if you enjoyed this episode, everybody, stay tuned for the next one, Frank, and for all, for the next guests we have on Authors on Mission as well. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission, and your host today. And until next time, keep writing, keep leading, and keep inspiring. And Frank, once again, thank you for joining us.
God bless you all. Thank you.
Have an amazing night, everybody. Thank you.
As we close another inspiring episode, remember, every best-selling author was once just a person with a story to tell. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, inviting you to write the next chapter of your success story at authorsonmission.com. Your audience is waiting, your wisdom is ready, and your book is next.